Hi everyone, Stepan here. I'm going to show you probably my best game from the Pula Open tournament. I faced a FIDE master, and during my prep I had decided to play the Reti for the first time ever, so knight f3 with c4, but there was a very specific reason I decided to do that. My opponent has the exact same repertoire that I play, and there is one annoying line for every semi-Slav player in the world, and that's when white plays a position with e3 without d4, because then you don't have bishop f5. So I played knight f3. My opponent played d5, and I played c4. I knew that he was going to play c6. That's what I play. You want to play the semi-Slav. But after c6, not d4, not knight c3, not g3, but e3, a proper Reti, where now you don't have the option to play bishop f5. In a Reti with b3, bishop f5 can be played because the queen cannot come out to b3. In this case, bishop f5 is bad. So after knight f6, I played knight c3. And on knight c3, there are very few options. You can go g6, a6, e6, bishop g4. If you go bishop f5, then cd, cd, and queen b3, and your best move, your only move, is bishop c8. So why did you play bishop f5? Now I can go bishop b5 check, or d4, and so on. So after knight c3, my opponent played a move that I had prepared for. The best move is e6, but now after e6, I don't go d4. I don't play a normal semi-Slav. Instead I play b3. And now black is left in a Reti position without the bishop on f5. Okay, so now I don't need queen b3. The bishop isn't outside of the pawn chain, and I can safely play b3 and bishop b2, and this is just an unfavorable Reti for black. And I play this with white now, but I played it with black many times. This is the most annoying setup by far for the semi-Slav player. So my opponent wanted to avoid that, and he played bishop g4, which is an inferior move. And in this position there are three moves: queen b3, cd5, and h3. I had a bit of a think because I couldn't decide what to do. On queen b3, which is perfectly fine, there's queen b6 followed by knight e5. On d4, well, then e6, and I discarded that pretty quickly. But on h3, the bishop should take on f3. If the bishop goes to h5, then queen b3 is very scary. And now queen b6, there is g4, bishop g6, g5, knight fd7, cd5, and the pawn hangs. So this wasn't playable. And on bishop f5, I go cd, cd, and queen b3, and once again the bishop must move to c8. So I basically got two tempi, h3 and queen b3, for free. Therefore, bishop f5 is also bad. So on h3, my opponent took on f3 immediately. He told me after the game that he had played this before. Okay, queen f3. Now I have the bishop pair. My opponent plays e6, having, traded off his bad bishop, d4, but now it's not the same thing. Your bishop is not on c8, but I have the bishop pair, and this was a small win. We are now transposing into a mainer line opening. This has been played many times, knight bd7, and in this position, I still knew this position. There's bishop d3 or bishop d2, but there's also cd5. Normally, when black plays knight bd7, you take on d5, because the knight can no longer go to c6, going into an exchange Caro-Kann, let's say. Oh, sorry, exchange Slav if cd5. So I took on d5 now, and ed5 and cd5 are playable, but you don't really want an exchange Slav with a knight on d7. And when he took with the e-pawn, which I had expected, you don't really want a Carlsbad without a light-squared bishop. And I got this position. I was really happy about it. This is exactly what I wanted to get. Bishop d3, bishop d6, castles, castles, and this was sort of the end of my prep. So obviously white should play for e4, and e4 is one of the most straightforward moves. I do have to show you one thing though. I had been debating whether to play g4 or not after bishop d6. That wasn't my prep. I have not checked that before the game, but I got the idea to play g4 here. And of course, I don't think black should castle against it. If castles, that seems very scary. g5, the knight must go to e8, and now just h4. I can eventually play bishop d2 and castle queenside. I wasn't sure about this. And since I had a good position and I had the bishop pair, I decided not to risk anything. The engine says g4 is the best move, but this is fine. This is about equal. Castles, castles, rook e1. I want to play for e4. My opponent played rook e8, and I played bishop d2. And I think my opponent's next move led to a disaster. I mean, it did, and it's not a good move. My opponent played bishop c7. Okay, test your strategy. Why is bishop c7 bad? Well, in a Carlsbad structure, white wants to play b4, b5, and undermine the c6 pawn, the so-called minority attack. The bishop was on d6, preventing b4. Now it's not. Normally, after a normal move, I don't know, queen c7, let's say, or a6, or knight f8, I would have to go a3 or rook b1 to prepare b4. After bishop c7, I don't have to do that. My opponent just wasted the tempo, and I'm going b4. And now it's not easy to prevent b5. If you go a6, I go a4. And on knight f8, I mean, eventually I'm going to play b5. But my opponent compounded his mistake with b5, and I think b5 is the losing move. I was really surprised to see b5. Bishop c7 and b5 are really weak moves. And now, how do you continue with white? I did not play the best move. I played a move that I thought was winning. a4 is the best move by far. a4 is completely crushing, because the pawn is hanging. If you play a6, I go e4, and the entire diagonal is wide open. d4, knight e4, knight e4, bishop e4, there is no way to hold on to material. I'm going to take on c6. So after a4, e4 is stronger. I played e4 straight away, and I had assumed that this was also crushing. d4 is losing. d4, knight e4, I can go knight d5. And, or sorry, black can go knight d5, for example, but then rook ec1 and the c6 pawn is hanging. And if everything is taken a couple of times, then bishop e4 and everything hangs. So understandably, my opponent after e4 didn't take. He played knight b6, creating a square for the knight on d7. But now white has a very natural attack. This is move 15, and white has a crushing advantage. Black's king, after knight fd7, is left without any defenders. The knight could come to f8, sure, but all of my pieces are coming in with tempo. So now I had this feeling that I was winning, and I had to keep up the pressure. I didn't want to mess things up. So I tried to play extremely active moves. My idea was queen h5, bishop g5, rook e3, rook g3, and something's gonna hang. There's really no way to calculate here, because there are so many possibilities for black, like g6 or knight f8 or rook e7 or queen e7, or even knight c8, knight e7, knight g6, that calculating is meaningless. You need to visualize where your pieces want to go. So I played queen h5. My opponent needs to defend h7. g6 is very bad, knight f8 is better. But now bishop g5. Okay, the queen must move. f6, of course, is complete suicide. Queen d7, rook e3, the rook's coming to g3. My opponent played bishop d8. I don't want to waste time trading or moving my bishop to f4, so rook g3. Bishop takes, queen takes. Okay, now once again you have to defend g7. My opponent played knight g6. I don't really know what to suggest here. Knight g6 is, according to the engine, the best move. g6, I saw that g6 was losing, and I saw why. I go knight e2 and knight f4, and knight h5, knight f6. I'll be attacking with rook, queen, bishop, and knight. Knight g6 is also losing, but for a different reason. And now I spent about 10 minutes debating whether to play f4 or h4. And I don't know. I mean, f4 is the most natural move because it opens up the f-file, and also black cannot trade pawns. There was one line after h4 that went... Wait, how did that line go? Oh yeah, queen d8, queen g4 or queen f5, and queen takes h4. And now if queen takes h4, knight takes h4, this is just a free pawn. Whereas after f4, if my opponent plays queen d8, I can now go queen h5. And if queen h4, I can now play bishop takes g6. I could have done that as well, but I can also play queen h4, and after knight h4 I can go f5. And my opponent didn't take the h4 pawn, and I'm still crushing them. So that's the reason I played f4. h4 would have allowed queen d8, queen h4, with the h4 pawn falling. And yeah, there is no defense now. My opponent played queen e7. Of course, I don't want to trade queens. I played queen g4. If queen h4 now, then I can just trade and go f5. But my opponent played a crazy move, which I hadn't expected at all. Of course, I want to play f5 and win. And my opponent took on b4. I saw queen takes b4, and very briefly I entertained the possibility of playing f5 anyway, but there's no need to risk anything because this is check. If I play f5, it's not check, but the knight's hanging and maybe I'm in trouble, so knight e2. I played this in about 10 seconds. I didn't really look at f5 because this is so crushing and everything's defended and black has no counterplay. Okay, so now f5 is coming, the queen must come back. So black took a pawn. It doesn't really matter, f5. g7 isn't hanging, but the knight has no squares. My opponent took on e5. If the knight goes to h8, then I can go knight f4 or rook f1. Knight f4 is probably the cleanest move, followed by knight h5. And if the knight goes to e7, then I can play f6, of course. And on knight g6, excuse me, knight f4 once again. So that's game over. So my opponent took on e5. Now I'm up a piece. Rook takes, and the knight is coming in. Knight f4. I want to go knight h5. My opponent played king h8, and here I had a long think. I couldn't decide between knight h5 and f6. They are the two best moves, and it's very tempting to play knight h5, but I was slightly worried about the knight transferring back somehow via d7. So for example, knight h5, knight d7, f6, I don't know. It seemed good. But in the end I played f6 because it's the most straightforward move. g6 and g5 lose. fg loses very simply. I just go queen h4 with an attack on f6. And if you save your rook, let's say, I don't know, rook d6, so sorry, rook e6, I can just play queen h7 mate. So this is unstoppable. So on f6 my opponent must play g6 or g5. He played g6, which is a bit more normal. But now the final attack is coming, queen h4, and a sacrifice on g6 is crushing, and there is no way to defend. The h-pawn is pinned. If you play king g8, then I can simply reinforce my position with rook f1, which I probably would have done, but knight g6 is winning. I had calculated this. If hg6, rook g6, fg6, bishop g6, there is no defense to h7. You have to play rook e7, and then I just take it. Okay, so on queen h4, my opponent rerouted the rook to g8 with a tempo check, queen c5, king h2, rook g8, and now every sacrifice works. Bishop g6, knight g6, and rook g6, they all work. I remembered my game against Debevets from last round, where I thought there were two winning endgames, which was incorrect. One was winning. So I spent, I don't know how long, but I wanted to make sure that everything I thought was winning actually was winning. So I invested a lot of time here and I ended up taking with the bishop. Every capture wins, as I said, but bishop takes is, in my opinion, the cleanest. If you don't take, it's mate on h7, so you have to take. And you have to take with the f-pawn. So the calculation is pretty simple. And after this, I go f7, and that's about it. If you play king g7, I take the rook. if you play rook g7, that's what I had, expected. My opponent resigned after f7, but let me just show you. On rook f8, queen f6, so that doesn't work, loses the rook on e5 with mate. So rook g7, the only move to sort of stay in the game, but now my calculation was knight g6 check, rook takes g6, and queen f6 check. And I would have been very happy to play this on the board. Unfortunately, my opponent resigned. Of course, rook g1. Sorry, rook g8 mate. So my opponent resigned on f7. I think after bishop c7 and b5, it was very easy to play. It felt like the most natural attacking game in the world, like nothing could go wrong. I didn't drop my advantage. I didn't play the most precise moves, but the engine evaluation in a position like this one doesn't really matter. f6 was best and queen h4 was best, but I had a few mistakes along the way. But it's a very natural attacking position, and when you get a position where you're attacking with 4 pieces and the pawn, and your opponent is defending with a queen and rook, then winning is inevitable unless you blunder. So I think this was my favorite game of the tournament. 30 moves and a pretty clean win, I would say. Not thanks to my strategic prowess or anything, but because my opponent played bishop c7 followed by b5 and made things very easy for me after e5. Okay, I'll continue with the Pula Open tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think and stay tuned for more chess. Bye-bye.